You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today my guests include Bonnie Dow, a feminist scholar who helps put our activist past into its media context, very important, and a woman, Pramila Jayapal, who is focused on the present, from grassroots organizing to state office holding in Washington state, and a woman, Cora Weiss, whose energies have been set for decades on the future, a global peace activist who knows that without peace, there simply is no future. But first, you and I need to look inside the headlines. Inside the headlines this week are all shout-outs to positive actions. Don't fall over sideways in shock. Once in a while we get to celebrate a few things. First shout-out is to Angelina Jolie for coming into public not only as she did a while ago, 2 years ago, about her choice to have a preventive double mastectomy because she has the BRCA1 gene and cancer has run heavily in her family, but now to do the same thing in terms of her 50% risk for ovarian cancer. So she had her next preventive surgery, the removal of ovaries and fallopian tubes. She made it very clear that, quote, "I did not do this solely because I carry the gene mutation, and I want other women to hear that a positive BRCA test does not mean a leap to surgery." She makes a point of emphasizing there's more than one way to deal with any health issue. The most important thing is to learn about the options and choose what's right for you personally. But her simply coming forth, given her high profile, is an amazing and important gesture that will help other women do the same. And she has come forth on another front related to this, saying, quote, "Regardless of the hormone replacements I'm taking, I'm now in menopause. I will not be able to have any more children, and I expect some physical changes, but I feel at ease with whatever will come, not because I'm strong, but because this is a part of life. It is nothing to be feared." When somebody who is considered one of the most sexy women in the world and glamorous openly affirms menopause as something not to be feared, that's a good moment for all women. So kudos to Angelina Jolie. Second set of kudos goes, wait for it, to France. France, you say? Yes, France. Because the French, as of March 30th, woke up the morning after their local elections with 50% of the winners of all local councils women. It's a result of radical reforms set in motion by the socialist government, so each canton or ward has to elect not one but two representatives, a man and a woman, and they will stand on the same ticket from now to eternity, known as the binôme. So women now make up 50% of all governing local councils. That's a huge shift from before this mandate, when women made up just 14% of the councils. And last, this courageous, wonderful Ohio lawmaker. On March 25th, the Democrat from Toledo, Ohio, State Representative Teresa Fedor, F like freedom, E-D-O-R, she took the microphone when lawmakers were debating a bill that would ban abortions even if there's a detectable heartbeat as early as 6 weeks of pregnancy. So she abruptly asked to speak during the debate, and she outed herself. She's a 15-year veteran of the legislature, and she outed herself, revealing a long-kept secret that she had been raped years earlier and had become pregnant as a result and had had an abortion. She said, quote, "You don't respect my reason, my rape, my abortion, and I guarantee you there are other women who should stand up with me and be courageous enough to speak that voice. What you are doing is so fundamentally inhuman. unconstitutional, and I've sat here too long. I dare every one of you to judge me. How dare government get in my business? She noted her own military service. She served in the Air Force and the National Guard, and she noted that our military women who are rape survivors deserve to make their own personal choice. And then somebody started laughing. So she went on saying, I see people laughing and I don't appreciate that, and it happens to be a man who is laughing. But this is serious business right now, and I'm speaking for all the women in the state of Ohio who did not get the opportunity to be in front of that committee and make this statement. Representative from Toledo, Ohio, Democrat in the state representative body, Teresa Fedor, definitely the heroine of the day. And now for our first guest. Bonnie J. Dow is an associate professor and chair of communication studies and an associate professor of women's and gender studies at Vanderbilt University. She is the author of Primetime Feminism, Television, Media Culture, and the Women's Movement since 1970, and she's just come out with a new book called Watching Women's Liberation, 1970, Feminism's Pivotal Year on the Network News. Here's Bonnie Dow. Bonnie, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thanks so much.
Well, you have covered a period of lively activism, of which I was a part, and you were actually accurate. My God, as one ages and sees historians, feminist historians and feminist academics beginning to write books about things that one did with other women in the 70s, and so you encounter a fair amount of, how shall I put it, revisionism. But I was so refreshed because you were accurate. My God. The book is called Watching Women's Liberation, 1970, and the subtitle is Feminism's Pivotal Year on the Network News. Indeed. Bonnie, how did you, I know that you're a chair of communication studies and an associate professor in communications, but how did you come to focus particularly on this year and this subject?
Well, the genesis of this project actually is in a book I wrote about almost 20 years ago, which was about the depiction of the second wave of feminism in television programming, fictional television programming, or entertainment television programming.
Primetime television, the one called Primetime Feminism, television,
exactly.
Media culture, yeah.
Right. So when I was writing that book, and in particular when I was writing the sort of first case study in that book, which is about the Mary Tyler Moore Show, sort of widely acknowledged as the first commercial television program to thoroughly acknowledge the influence of feminism, I did a lot of research about the moment in time when it appeared on television, which was September of 1970.
Right.
And in the process of that, I just I noticed this enormous uptick in all kinds of news coverage of the second wave at that particular moment, and it really intrigued me. And so after that book was done, I thought, well, the next thing I want to do is a book about news coverage in this moment. And when I started doing research at the Vanderbilt Television News Archives, which, has archived all of the nightly newscasts since 1968,
right,
one of the things that came to my attention was that 1970 was this year with an enormous amount of network news coverage of the movement.
Yeah.
And there's something, it's more coverage of the movement itself than would ever appear again, because it was just the breakout year.
That's right.
For feminism in terms of attention, not certainly in the press, although press coverage had really been ongoing since 1967, 1968,
right,
particularly in the New York Times. But as far as commercial television was concerned and national network news, it was 1970.
Right. But your book goes backward to 67, 68, Miss America pageant, and then forward into 1970, the Grove Press seizure and occupation, the Ladies' Home Journal sit-in, the caucuses at the Times and at the Post and at the News. It's really quite encyclopedic in a sense of that focus and of that time. The beginning of Ms. when Harry Reasoner said, "I give them 6 months, they'll run out of things to say."
Right.
And my God, and here the magazine is almost 50 years later. He did recant, I must say, but all this time later, it took. We must be slow on the uptake, but it took us quite a few decades later to realize that no matter how careful and no matter how well constructed the demonstrations are, if the coverage is skewed or if you're invisible in the media, you might as well not be doing anything because nobody knows about it. So it wasn't until 10 years ago that Gloria and I, together with Jane Fonda, founded the Women's Media Center to address how the media covers, well, everything, but that includes feminism. So it's taken us a while.
There's a real confluence of factors in that particular moment. It's right around 1970 that television becomes the primary news source for most Americans. So
right.
It was a moment when we were moving from sort of a print-centered national media consciousness to a television-centered national media consciousness, which had enormous implications for feminism because there are particular problems that I talk about in the book that have to do with the way women are depicted visually.
Right.
And so it's not just, so you have to add this additional layer sort of portrayal and of possibility for distortion or slant.
Yes.
Because of the way that the pictures are, married to the words.
One of the things that you do very effectively is point out this is my word for it, the archetypes, the stereotypes that once they attach in media are literally impossible to get rid of. Bra burning being perhaps the most pernicious, certainly to this day. There are fewer and fewer as time goes on. Today, feminism is hot again. I couldn't be more pleased that we're hot. But the myth that we burned bras on the boardwalk instead of the Freedom trash can is amazing. It's all over the world. I am sure, just as Gloria is positive that her obit in the New York Times will say, and former pretend Playboy bunny, mine will say, and former child actor, and bra burner. So once they're there, in this case, thanks to Lindsay Van Gelder, a writer at the Post who thought she was being helpful. Oh my God!
Right.
By starting her article ahead of the protest by comparing us to the draft card burners, which in the left would have given us some mana, some heft, some creds, but in the rest of the world, she really did us in.
Right. Well, this is why it's so incredibly important to talk about this coverage in the context of its particular moment, because people don't have that kind of context often for understanding how bra burning got attached to the movement.
That's
which is why I thought it was really important to write a chapter about the Miss America pageant protest, even though it did not appear on the nightly news, because the influence of that protest is incredibly important for the movement on the one hand, because it brought so many women to the movement and because it created such enormous awareness, but also because it did set in place these notions that lasted forever. Yeah. And when Lindsay Van Gelder, made that analogy between draft card burning and bra burning, she was absolutely trying to say, this is an outgrowth of the wave of protests that we've all been experiencing. This is, part and parcel of political unrest.
Yeah.
And the counterculture, et cetera. And of course, it was a couple of weeks after the protests at the DNC. It was a completely reasonable comparison to make.
Right.
But it was taken, but of course, because there was this, understanding that women's role is not, in fact, to do these things, that when women protest, it's ridiculous, then it got turned, this bra-burning trope got turned in a direction that made it into something that ridiculed the movement.
That's right.
It was used to ridicule the movement rather than to give it political credibility, which, as you know, is one of the central concerns in that chapter, is to talk about the ways that initial coverage of the movement really worked against recognizing the political credibility of the early feminists and the fact that they had lots of political experience.
Yes, of course. Yes, it was trivialized and ignored and just erased. I mean, first they ridicule you, and then if you survive that, then they begin to attack you, and then if you survive that, then they try to co-opt you, and then if you survive that, they say, well, we knew all along that this was valid, so, and try to claim you. But we were certainly in the ridiculed at phase then, and I thank you for going behind the scenes and analyzing the what and where and how these things happen, because, as you say, if people are not encountering the myths and the stereotypes in a context, they just live on. When I read the piece by Lindsay Van Gelder, my heart sank, because I knew enough about media to know, oh, good God, this is going to stick, and it certainly stuck. Anyway, it's a terrific book. Thank you for writing it. The book again is called Watching Women's Liberation 1970. Feminism's Pivotal Year on the Network News. The author is Bonnie Dow, and the publisher is University of Illinois Press. And thanks again, and thanks for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
We have to take a brief pause here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan, and I will be right back with a woman who is following in very distinguished footsteps, that of a community organizer who runs for and gains public elected office. I know you're thinking of Barack Obama, but I'm thinking of Pramila Jayapal in the State Senate of Washington State.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. Our next guest is Pramila Jayapal. She founded and directed an immigrant and civil rights nonprofit organization whose mission is to advance democracy and justice through building power in immigrant communities. She grew that organization not only to be the largest immigrant rights group in Washington State and one of the largest in the country, but with demonstrated successes in organizing and policy change and civic engagement of immigrants. It's called One America, and now she is in the State Senate of Washington State. Pramila Jayapal, and is she making waves? Pramila, welcome back to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin. It's so great to be with you.
Well, let's start with congratulations to you. You, since we last spoke, have become the only woman of color in the State Senate of Washington State and the first South Asian American elected in the whole entire state legislature. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I never know whether to be thrilled by that or a little distressed. So it's a little of both.
It's a both and. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The saying, it's the first swimmer on the ice who gets the most cut. The second finds the ice broken, and the third finds it gone. So are you getting a lot of cuts, or are people sort of smiling and not knowing what to do with you?
I think that everyone is sort of, the people that know me are looking and wondering how I'll do, going from the outside to the inside, and thrilled to have a supporter there. I think everybody else is waiting to see exactly what this looks like.
Oh, it is a thrill to have you there. I mean, we're so unused to winning. We're so unused to actually having power that it's kind of intoxicating and heady, but it's just so important. You know that. And also, I will say this, that the politicians over the last 30, 40 years that I and most of us have come to trust are people who, in fact, are our own, who came from social justice movements, starting with Bella Abzug or Maxine Waters in California.
That's right.
And there's a real difference if you've been, as you have, out there in the streets when you hit being in the legislatures. There's a qualitative difference.
No, absolutely. And there's some incredible mentors. I've just finished reading Shirley Chisholm's autobiography, which I hadn't read for quite some time. And, just reminded again of how we cannot afford to cede the territory of politics.
Right.
I mean, this is a very important place. And as much as I think people have a low opinion of government, of politicians, that is a story that is ours for the remaking, and we have to take it up, and we have to make sure that we're out there saying, no, this is our job. We have to go in and we have to change politics to make it relevant to the people again. And when you think about how many decisions are made that affect, tens of millions of people every day, small decisions in state legislatures, I think this is where the fight is.
That's right. I mean, and your specific background has been women's movement and brilliantly as an organizer and activist in terms of immigrant and civil rights nonprofit NGOs with One America and Hate Free Zone and all that stuff that you talked about so wonderfully when you were last on the program. So that's a kind of voice and an experience. My God, which Justice Sotomayor said when she was in the Senate hearings, that she's not going to deny it. She brings a different experience to her office, and we need that experience there. We need officials who look like America.
Yeah, I think it's really true, and I do think that there are going to be, and I've already seen it just in the few meetings I've been in, so many tables where if people like me were not there, decisions would be made in a way that disproportionately impacts people of color, low-income people, women, in ways that are negative. And
That's
I think
right.
that, it isn't always the big, sexy bill that's going to be the thing that we make the most impact on. It's going to be all a series of little things as well that are policies that trickle down and make life untenable for so many people. So I'm really hoping to be able to make a difference on the policy side and on the organizing side, to be able to create an organizing movement both inside and outside the legislature that helps us advocate for the values that we believe in.
I'm sure you will. I mean, and it's all the more important these days, as I know you know, because more and more, a lot of decisions are moving, political decisions, and how they play out are moving to the state level. And the right wing the Republican Party have paid close attention to that, more so it seems to me than our general side has. So I
completely agree. That is one of the reasons I decided to run for the state legislature. It was not something that I had in mind actually before. But what I saw is that with the stalling of progress at the federal level, and sort of the undoing of good federal policies that we have, so much has been pushed down to the state. Even on immigration, I think, in the absence of a federal immigration reform package, what's happening is many, mostly conservative states, but including, many liberal states, have passed negative immigration policies at the state level. And so we have to both, guard against that and look for opportunities to do things at the states in the ways, frankly, that many cities are doing. If you look at, the $15 minimum wage that we passed here in Seattle, which I was very proud to work on, or you look at paid sick days. I mean, those are movements that started in many cases in cities, and so we have to do the same thing at the state legislature too, and use every avenue from local to federal to get the kinds of policies that we're looking for.
That's right. What are your special hopes for what you yourself can get done there, or is it too early to say?
It's a little early to say. The state Senate, unfortunately, is in Republican control. So we're limited both by who controls political power and the way that the committees have been set up.
Sure.
But I think that where we are at the state and what I really hope to do, I'm representing the most economically and racially diverse district in the state. It's a 37th legislative district, which includes basically most of South Seattle and part of North Renton and some areas in between.
Wow.
Extremely diverse. And for us, in this district, education is one of the top priorities. We in this state, the state Supreme Court actually held the legislature in contempt for not funding education. We are 47th in terms of class size in the country,
Wow.
and we're 41st in terms of per pupil spending. And a lot of that has to do with our incredibly regressive tax system in the state. We're one of the 3 most regressive taxing states in the country because we have no income tax at all. So we rely on a very regressive sales tax. So I think those 2 things are top priorities for me in terms of, trying to generate the kind of revenue that we need to make the investments that we need, but to do it in a way that doesn't tax the people at the bottom, which is what's happening now. The top 1% is paying just a couple of percent of their income in taxes, and the bottom 20% is paying about 17% of their income in taxes.
Oh.
So it's just, and we have incredible growth in this state. I mean, Microsoft and Amazon and Boeing and all these huge companies that pay no tax at all because we have a upside down B&O, business and occupation tax system. So these companies are paying very little tax. Wealthy people are paying very little tax. So we have an opportunity, I think, to invest in different kinds of taxes, which will be a long-fought battle. The state has repeatedly rejected those measures, unfortunately. And so I hope that we can get a capital gains tax passed this year. The governor has proposed a tax on big polluters, a carbon tax on big polluters, and I hope that we can start to get revenue that, money that is from the people who should pay and put it towards things like education and transit.
Sounds good to me. Sounds wonderful, in fact. Pramila, I wish you all the possible best luck, which you don't need, but I'll wish it for you anyway with all the work that you're doing there. I expect to see you move to national legislatures and someday run for president, and that would make me very, very happy. And you're just absolutely terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Thank you for everything you do, Robin.
And now let's practice some verbal karate. You will remember that the very first book published by the Women's Media Center by WMC Press, its new baby, is called Unspinning the Spin, the Women's Media Center Guide to Fair and Accurate Language, and it's available on the website of womensmediacenter.com, and it's by Rosalie Maggio, the great wordsmith, and it has an introduction by Gloria Steinem and myself, and it's a wonderful book to use as a reference, to browse in. Every journalism student should have it. Everybody who cares about language and loves writing or reading should have it. It not only tells you which words are not bias-free, it tells you which words are to replace them with. So periodically I return to it for the sheer fun of it, because the entries are filled with facts and historical goodies and all sorts of additional information. For example, here's one, Bechdel test. Created by American cartoonist Alison Bechdel, this simple test is designed to raise moviegoers' awareness of gender disparity on screen. To pass the Bechdel test, a film must meet the following 3 criteria. 1, it must have at least 2 named female characters. 2, who talk to each other. 3, about something other than a man. The Swedish Film Institute, bless the Swedes, is supporting an initiative to incorporate the Bechdel test into a rating system that would award an A to only those films that pass the test. And here's another entry. Cuckold. What do they call it when a woman is cuckolded? Apparently that doesn't matter enough to have its own word. Consider referring instead to one partner as being unfaithful while the other is betrayed. See also adulterer and philanderer. Now, that one is a male-specific word. Nothing for women in there. But the next one is women-specific, and not in a complimentary way. Catfight. When women disagree with each other, the proceedings are sometimes stereotyped as a catfight. Men's disagreements are not called catfights or dogfights or anything else. They are simply arguments, disagreements, debates, discussions, conflicts, or disputes. Then there's matronly. We really need to replace this vague word with precise, inclusive terms like dignified, gracious, ponderous, heavy-set, established, grave, comfortable-looking, serene, slow-moving, well-dressed, mature, and sedate. There is, by the way, no such word as patronly. Yeah, not a surprise, that. Here's one that I like, hysteria or hysterical. Based on the Greek for womb, hysteria was thought to be caused by disturbances in the womb. These terms are used almost entirely and often inappropriately of women. For the medical condition, use histrionic personality disorder. For the noun, use terror, fear, frenzy, emotional excess, wildness, outburst, explosion, flare-up, seizure, eruption, delirium. For the adjective, use terrified, angry, outraged, irate, incensed, enraged, furious, infuriated, livid, upset, agitated, delirious, beside oneself, carried away, raving, raging, seething, distracted, frantic, frenetic, frenzied, wild, berserk, uncontrollable, and don't ever use it as a synonym for hilarious. Remember, it means wandering womb. And last but not least, while we're on to such emotional words, the word emotional itself. In our culture, emotional is not an admired trait. So the word is most often used as an antonym for rational or intelligent. Largely because of changing social attitudes toward women, emotional is not used as often as it once was to rebut a woman's arguments or generally discount her as a thinking human being. But the problem today, according to the entry, is that women can now wax logical while men look silly waxing emotional. So until men are free to wax emotional, and until emotional is a positive word for both sexes, use it very cautiously and with no hysteria. We have to take another quick break here. I'm Robin Morgan. This is Women's Media Center Live. And there are some people I refer to as long-distance runners because they're not in for the sprint, they're in for the long run and still running. And we'll be back with one of them in just a moment, Cora Weiss.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back again. Cora Weiss is a titan in the women's movement and the peace movement. She's currently president of the Hague Appeal for Peace, and she has been known as a peace activist since the early 1960s when she was a co-founder of Women's Strike for Peace. Hague is leading a campaign dedicated to the abolition of war, seeking to refocus our minds on the vision of a world in which violent conflict is publicly acknowledged as illegitimate, illegal, and fundamentally unjust. Here is Cora Weiss. Cora, great Cora, wonderful Cora, welcome to the program.
It's wonderful to be with you, Robin.
Well, you are a giant of our time, and probably of any time. You're actually a petite woman, but a giant of a petite woman. You have been the leading light on peace in this country and to a very large extent on the planet ever since I cut my political eye teeth. I mean, in the early 60s, you were, of course, a founder of Women's Strike for Peace. You played a huge role in bringing about the end of nuclear testing. You were a leader in the anti-Vietnam War movement. It just goes on and on and on. You were president of the International Peace Bureau, which was a Nobel laureate. You were, you have just, if it's peace, you're there. And you also, when you were a trustee of Hampshire College, you started the idea of campus campaigns to divest stocks in South Africa. So let me start by saying a huge, heartfelt thank you. Well, yeah,
You're going to make me cry with all that. I don't recognize the woman you've just described.
Well, there's a great...
But we can't stop.
No, well, they can't stop. And I want to start, in fact, by asking you the question I know my listeners will want to have some kind of clue about. How do you keep on keeping on?
Robin, the world is just in a tailspin going down the tubes.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Pretty bad.
Name a country where there isn't civil war or civil strife or racism or severe poverty or. I mean, that's troubles are terrible.
Many people would take that as a sign that it's hopeless, it's useless, and they would throw in the towel.
Nothing can be hopeless. And we can't leave it this way for our children and grandchildren. And I have to get up every morning remembering my 5 grandchildren.
I mean, of course, we go on, but you have quite an amazing arc that is still climbing, and the energy and the vision and the commitment is extraordinary, And you've also, very early on, before other people made the connection, you saw women as the key to peace, not in some, Hallmark card, peacey, nice way, but very strongly and in leadership.
Well, let me tell you about 2 things that have recently happened that demonstrate that. When I say why women, or when people ask why women, I give them a long list of what women have done just since the early 60s that have made a difference. Women educated the public opinion on the atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons and the radiation that came to the grass and the fact that the cows ate the grass and we fed our babies cow milk. And when President Kennedy signed what we call the Half-Ban Treaty outlawing atmospheric nuclear testing, he recognized the role that women played. He sent his wife, Jackie, out with coffee and donuts. We ate donuts in those days, to recognize us, and we were at the gate as a witness to his signature. And since then, there have been just a lot of instances where women have made a huge difference. The 2 women at the Irish peace table, and so forth. So today, in the last few weeks, we've announced that 30 international women are going to walk across the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, calling for an end to the war. The war has never stopped, has never ended. There's never been a peace treaty between North and South Korea, or between the 6 nations that have been sometimes talking about a peace agreement. So 30 international women will walk across on May 24th, which is Women's International Disarmament Day. And they're going to meet with the women of North Korea and meet with the women of South Korea.
Will there be resistance from either country? Or do you need permission?
So far, we do need, of course, they need permission. And they haven't gotten it from the South yet, but there are rumors going around the journalists in the South of South Korea that Mrs. Park may be interested in this.
So the North...
And in the North gave permission in the beginning, but it was kind of conditional, and now they're kind of whiffle-waffing about it.
I see.
But it's very possible that they, too, will come through, because they've all suggested that women apply for visas and apply for plane tickets from China to North Korea.
Interesting.
So it's looking better than it has, and when it really will look perfect, I'll call you back.
Yep.
But the point is that it's an extraordinarily timely and important initiative that women are taking. The other thing that's fabulous that's going to happen is that some women are being invited to join or to talk with the Colombian government and the FARC, who are negotiating and have been negotiating for a peace agreement for the past 3 years in Havana, with Norway and Cuba and, is it Venezuela? And as the facilitators.
The FARC is the the insurgent group.
Right.
Just to explain for the listeners who might
exactly.
not know. Yeah.
So, and this person is going to go down and talk about getting rid of the landmines and prohibiting them from happening again, and about the role of the government and the FARC in treating women, and not just women victims, but women as players in implementing the peace agreement.
So it seems
terrific news.
That is terrific news. It seems like the resolution 1325 that we fought so hard for at the UN is actually maybe being deployed. And
there you go. And I was one of the drafters.
I know you were. I know.
And it is being co-opted by some countries who go out and announce that they have women in the army now, when the women who drafted and wrote 1325 on women, peace, and security were peace women, and they intended it to be a peace resolution by requiring women to participate at all levels of decision making.
That's right.
And at all peace tables.
Which countries are trying to co-opt it by saying we have them in our military?
I would like your listeners to try to guess.
Oh, don't tell me we're one of them. We're one of them.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
About 50 countries have written national action plans, and 1325 are probably the four best known numbers around the UN.
Yes.
We commemorate it every year on October 31st. This will be the 15th anniversary this coming October, and we're planning a big commemoration. But it needs to be implemented as it was intended, with participation of women at all levels of decision making and at peacemaking tables, and the prevention of violent conflict. It's a peace resolution.
That's right. Of course it is. We're beginning to run out of time, but I have one last question, which of course requires 3 hours of answer. But if you can do it in a fortune cookie, a haiku, that would be good. Which is that groups like ISIL and the atrocities that they're committing against women, against men, against all living things, against art, are so extreme that they almost seem positioned to be provocative, and the world is rising to that bait. And I will confess to you that I have had moments of such blind grief and rage about what they're doing. That it strains one's peace muscles.
I understand that.
And I think it's
but
important
I believe
to admit that.
We cannot bomb democracy.
No.
Democracy doesn't drop bombs. Or bombs don't drop democracy.
Of course not. Of course not.
So the point of talking is that you don't talk to your friends in a peace agreement. You talk to your enemy.
That's right.
There just has to be an attempt to literally exhaust all nonviolent possibilities. And until we become exhausted, we should not consider the use of drones and bombs and other violent things.
It just perpetuates the cycle.
It does, and it kills civilians.
Of course it does.
And it excites young people around the world who are unemployed and have nothing else to do, and who say, what the hell?
That's right.
Let's go fight with them. So it's not a good thing that's happening. It's frighteningly horrible. But maybe if it's true that ISIL or ISIS is weakening, they may then agree to come to a table at some point.
Well,
But the effort to get them to the table must never stop.
thank you for all that you have done and are doing and will do. And I also thank you for being with us today on Women's Media Center Live.
I love you, and you are not what's wrong with the world. More Robin Morgans.
It's time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, but I'll be right back in just a moment or so with some fighting words, so don't you go away.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again in time for some fighting words. Recently, the New York Times reported on the booming industry in breast milk, human female breast milk. One private company, Prolacta Bioscience, buys breast milk for $1 an ounce, concentrates it, fortifies it, and then continues to proceed to sell the concentrated version for as much as $180 an ounce to hospitals. So companies like Prolacta and its big competitor Medolac are doing some good because they create a product that helps very premature babies. But that product comes at a huge price, and they're the ones that get paid for it, and besides, they don't even really create it. Now, let's go back to basics here. Some years ago, a New Zealand politician, Marilyn Waring, wrote a book that became a classic of feminist economics called Counting for Nothing, or What Men Value, What Women Are Worth. And in it, she pointed out that the national accounts of virtually every country, because they're enshrined in the United Nations system of national accounts, consider that what men do is productive because it's market economy, and all that vast labor of women producing the labor force itself, child raising, gardening, cooking, cleaning, gathering fuel, gathering water, tending animals, you name it, subsistence farming, is not in the market economy, so it's not productive. Cigarette smoking is productive because it produces all sorts of necessity for cancer cures and breathing machines. The Exxon oil spill was productive because think of all the money that was spent on cleaning it up. A standing forest is not productive, but when it's felled for lumber, hey, it's productive. So keeping that in mind, you will understand the ironic ambivalence I felt to discover that suddenly breast milk was being big time marketed. Keep in mind also that in a delivery room, if a woman is lucky enough to deliver in a delivery room or at home with a midwife, the midwife's work is considered productive. In the delivery room, the doctor is considered productive, the anesthesiologist, if there is one, the nurses, the aides, the woman giving birth herself in labor, not productive. That act does not appear in the national accounts. So feminist economists have been trying for some time to say we have to value differently. That doesn't necessarily mean wages for housework. That's a whole other scene. But simply valuing things like, a standing forest or women's life-giving labor and milk would create a very different society. Instead, what we're now doing is factoring women into the market economy, and part of me thinks, well, at least women are now visible. But if the going rate now is something like $1 to $4 an ounce, it's no wonder that some women consider the sale of their surplus breast milk as a part-time job. The industry, however, refers to it as liquid gold, because remember, they're getting $180 an ounce. Recently, an op-ed piece by Elizabeth Currid-Halkett called Give Breast Milk appeared in the opinion pages of the New York Times, in which she was urging women, if they had a surplus, to donate milk instead, because it is very important for premature babies to have access to this donated milk. And she happens to have plenty of it and donates quite a bit, but she also calls on philanthropic organizations focused on women and children's health ought to provide free pumps and storage bags to those mothers who want to donate but are daunted by the logistics. We need to make it easy for women to provide this service. You can look up that article at the New York Times. It was simply called Breast Milk. But breast milk donation should be more like giving blood, not for profit and not as part-time work, even though there'll always be a subset of people who sell their blood in the form of plasma, and that may be true for some women, as it was historically for wet nurses who were paid to feed other women's babies. But if every ounce counts, and it does, even if women aren't able to send hundreds of ounces to milk banks, milk drives sponsored by hospitals or health organizations could make it easier for women to take part and donate milk. The main thing is, I think we have to get it, ideally, out of the hands of big money producers like Prolacta Bioscience and Medolac, who pay the women as little as $1 an ounce and process it slightly and then sell it at $180 an ounce to hospitals. So it's nice to be factored into the market economy, but what we wanted to do was to change the market economy to value things that weren't in the market economy instead of inviting us in. Now we're in danger of losing control of the product. It's our product, our bodies, ourselves, our milk. So keep that in mind for any nursing or about to be nursing mothers you know. And that's it for today. Join us next week when we'll learn about a group that empowers girls through theater. And we'll talk with the 3 members of the long-running singing group Betty and hear one of their socially conscious songs, Rise. Also, since April is Parkinson's Awareness Month, Veronica Todaro of the Parkinson's Disease Foundation and I will discuss the Women in PD initiative we're working on. I'm really excited about it. This program is syndicated, but if you can't find the broadcast on a radio station in your area, you can always visit us at WMCLive.com for the show, plus the archive of all the previous episodes. And we're at iTunes worldwide. There you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook and Twitter. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton. Senior Producer, Crystal Williams Chancellor. And our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. The last straw this week is Ted Cruz announcing that since his wife left her job, she lost her health care. So now he's changed his position and is suddenly for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. I suppose we should be grateful. But if everything has to affect these right-wingers personally before they get it, well, the planet's not that patient. Such cynicism. Well, one antidote to the cynicism is for you to join us next week right here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.